I still remember the day Daniel walked out of my uncle's house. His head bowed, a warm bag in his hand, and tears streaking his face. None of us understood the weight of what was happening until the curses began. At first, they were subtle, a string of bad luck here and there. But soon, it became impossible to ignore. My aunt had made the mistake of sending away the boy God had sent to bless our home. Daniel was just a boy when tragedy struck his family. After he experienced sudden death in a car accident, he was sent to Lagos to live with my uncle Ade and Aunt Funke. I remember the day Daniel arrived at our house. It was a raining afternoon in Lagos. The air smelled of wet earth and exhaust from the passing downfall on a rainy day in Lagos. He stood at the gate, drenched from head to toe, clutching a small bag in one hand and a worn Bible in the other. His eyes were wide with a mix of fear and hope, like someone trying to convince themselves that things would get better. Uncle Ade opened the gate with a forced smile. "Come in, Daniel," he said, his voice steady but lacking warmth. Auntie Funke stood in the doorway, her arms folded across her chest. Her lips were pursed as she eyed him up and down like a stranger invading her territory. "Welcome, my boy," she said finally, her tone sweet enough to fool someone who didn't know her. But I knew that smile too well. It was the kind she wore when guests came over and she wanted to look like the perfect wife. Daniel stepped inside, dripping water onto the floor. "Thank you, Aunt Funke. Thank you, Uncle Hade," he said softly, bowing his head. His politeness only seemed to irritate her further. "You are dripping water everywhere," she snapped. "Go and change before you make the house a mess." Uncle Ade quickly intervened, pointing Daniel towards the small room at the back of the house where he would stay. I followed him, carrying his bag, which felt lighter than I expected. The room was bare, except for an old mattress on the floor and a small wooden table by the window. Daniel didn't seem bothered. He knelt by the mattress, placed his Bible on the table, and whispered a quiet prayer. I watched him curiously. "What are you doing?" I asked, sitting on the mattress. "Thanking God," he replied simply, his voice calm. "For what?" "This place isn't exactly a palace," I said, waving my hand at the peeling paint and cracked window. Daniel smiled faintly, his eyes still closed. "I am alive, aren't I? And I have a roof over my head. That's enough to thank God for." His words struck me. Here was a boy who had lost everything, his parents, his home, and yet he still found reasons to be grateful. Later that evening, we sat around the dinner table and Funke served everyone rice and stew, but gave Daniel the smallest portion. He didn't complain, just bowed his head and prayed silently before eating. I noticed Uncle Ade watching him, a flicker of guilt in his eyes. But Aunt Funke ignored him, busy criticizing Daniel's posture and the way he held the spoon. As I lay in bed that night, I heard him praying again, his whispers barely audible. "Lord, please bless this family," he said, "and help me to be a light in this house." Even then, I couldn't understand how someone could pray for people who treated him so poorly. But looking back now, I realized that Daniel wasn't just a boy who came to live with us. He was a reminder of the kind of faith that could move mountains. The days following Daniel's arrival were quiet, almost awkward, and Funke treated him like an unwelcome guest, giving him the cold shoulder most of the time. Uncle Ade was kind enough to show him where to fetch water and how to navigate the neighborhood, but he was clearly under Aunt Funke's thumb. On Daniel's third morning, Aunt Funke assigned him his first task. "You will be sweeping the compound every morning before breakfast," she announced at the dining table, her voice sharp. "Yes, ma." Daniel said without hesitation. Yet Daniel remained steadfast, never once snapping back or letting her words change his calm demeanor. And Funke muttered as she inspected his work. They are not completely useless, I see. But no matter how well Daniel worked, she never acknowledged him with kindness. She would find a new chore or a new way to criticize him. One Sunday morning, something unexpected happened, and Funke had been preparing jollof rice for lunch when she accidentally spilled a pot of boiling water on her hand. She screamed in pain, dropping the spoon she'd been holding. Uncle Ade rushed to her side, but before he could do much, Daniel had already fetched a bowl of cool water and helped her immerse her hand. Leave it! She barked at him, but he didn't flinch. It will help with the pain, Daniel said, his voice gentle but firm. He brought out some ointment from the first aid box and applied it carefully while she winced. Afterwards, she sat in silence, staring at him. I could see something shift in her expression, like she wasn't sure how to process the selflessness. But whatever it was, it didn't last long. That evening, while we heard the rice Daniel had finished cooking, Aunt Funke said nothing about the incident. Instead, she turned to Okwade and started complaining about how expensive things had gotten in Lagos. Daniel didn't seem to mind her silence. As always, he bowed his head and prayed before eating. As the days turned into weeks, Aunt Funke's treatment of Daniel grew worse. What started as harsh words escalated into unfair punishment and impossible expectations. She seemed determined to make his life miserable as if she were punishing him for something beyond his control. Daniel, come here, she barked one Saturday morning, standing by a pile of dirty laundry. You will wash all this before noon and don't think of using the washing machine. It's not for people like you. Daniel nodded and picked up the bucket without a word. I watched from the corner of the room, feeling a pang of guilt, but too scared to say anything. And Funke had a way of silencing anyone who dared to question her. By the time he was done scrubbing clothes by hand, his fingers were red and raw. But instead of complaining, he rushed, washed his hand, grabbed his Bible, and sat under the mango tree in the yard to read. I couldn't hold back anymore. Daniel, I called, sitting beside him. Why don't you just tell Uncle Ade? He can stop her, you know. Daniel shook his head, his eyes fixed on the open page of his Bible. Uncle Ade already knows, he said quietly. But he loves her, and it's not in my place to cause division in their home. Then why do you stay? I asked, frustrated. He smiled faintly. This is where God has placed me for now. I will trust Him to bring me through it. Adfunke wasn't just cruel with chores. She often accused Daniel of things he hadn't done. If something went missing, she would blame him. If a glass broke, it was automatically his fault. One evening, she accused him of stealing money from her purse, even though it was obvious she had misplaced it. You are a thief, she shouted, waving her finger in his face. We took you in, and this is how you repay us. I didn't take your money, Daniel said calmly, his voice steady but respectful. I promise. Liar, she snapped. You can't even look me in the eye. Uncle Ade tried to intervene, but Aunt Funke wouldn't let him. No, he needs to learn that actions have consequences. That night, Daniel prayed even longer than usual. I could hear his voice through the thin walls, soft but unwavering. Lord, I know you see my heart. Please help me to stay faithful and bring peace to this home. The next morning, Aunt Funke found the missing money under a stack of wrappers. She didn't apologize to Daniel, but her silence spoke volumes. After dinner, he quietly retreated to his room, where I knew he spent the rest of the evening reading his Bible and praying. I couldn't help but ask him about it that night. Why are you so unbothered? He looked up from his Bible, his face calm. What do you mean? She treats you like dirt, I said. You don't have to be so nice to her. Daniel smiled, a faint but genuine expression. The Bible says to love your enemies and pray for those who mistreat you. If I let her actions change how I act, I am no different from her. Also, Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. I am not doing this for her, I am doing it for God. I didn't fully understand what it meant at the time, but his words stay with me. Daniel wasn't just enduring Aunt Funke's cruelty, he was rising above it in a way that seemed almost supernatural. The breaking point came on a humid Friday afternoon, and Funke had been in a foul mood all day, snapping at everyone, even Uncle Ade. But as usual, it was Daniel who bore the brunt of her anger. She came home from the market dragging a heavy bag of groceries. Daniel, she shouted from the gate, are you deaf? Come and carry this bag. Daniel hurried out, taking the bag from her without complaint. But as he turned to take it inside, the handle tore, spilling vegetables, rice, and eggs onto the ground. You useless boy! Aunt Funke screamed, her face red with fury. How can you be so careless? Do you know how much all this costs? I am sorry, ma, Daniel said, bending to pick up the scattered items. Sorry? Sorry won't replace the broken eggs, she yelled, grabbing a broom and thrusting it at him. Clean this up now and you will pay for everything you have ruined. But I don't have any money, Daniel said quietly, still picking up the mess. Then you will work for it. I will find you a job cleaning gutters if I have to. That evening, Aunt Funke went a step further. She took Daniel's Bible and locked it in her room. If you have time to read this, you have time to work harder, she said with a sneer. For the first time since Daniel came to live with us, I saw tears in his eyes. He didn't argue or fight back. He simply knelt by his mattress, his hands clasped together in silent prayer. The next morning, Aunt Funke woke him up at dawn and sent him to the market with a long list of errands. She gave him barely enough money to cover the items, not to come back, and warned him not to come back until he had everything. As he left, I followed him to the gate. Are you okay? I asked. Daniel nodded, his face calm but tired. God is my strength, he said. I'll be fine. I didn't understand how he could hold on to his faith so firmly, but there was something about his unwavering trust in God that gave me hope too. Little did I know, or did we know, this trip to the market would change every single thing. The story continues. Please subscribe to the channel if you are yet to. Thank you. I want to know what you think or what you feel will happen to Daniel at the market. Please leave it in the comment section below.